Welcome to the Stoic Responder Podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Healy. As a special agent who spent more than 15 years conducting large-scale fraud, money laundering, and public corruption investigations, Stoic philosophy provided a mindset edge that became the foundation of my professional success. My mission today is to share those same ancient mindset lessons with you so that you can turn obstacles into opportunities and adversity into advantage. Time to muster up. All right, folks, welcome back to the Stoic Responder Podcast. This is episode 29. Today's Friday. We made it through another week, folks. I'm going to start you off with a quote. The episode's title, by the way, is called Meet It Bravely. I'll start you off with a quote, again by Seneca. I think that's 4 for 4 on Seneca. I'm gonna scroll back through my notes here and see. I think we went 4 for 4 on Seneca this week. We sure did. I didn't even realize that as I was prepping up these shows. That is wild. Well, Seneca was the most prolific of the Stoics when it comes to writing. If you start getting into reading more Stoic philosophy, you're going to go down a Seneca rabbit hole at some point or another. Seneca's an interesting guy. We're actually talking about Seneca today, so it's appropriate that we've quoted him 4 times this week. So let's jump right in. Today's quote, "Let us meet with bravery, whatever may befall us. Let us never feel a shudder at the thought of being wounded, or of being made a prisoner, or of poverty or persecution." What a perfect quote for first responders, right? Let us meet with bravery, whatever may befall us. Isn't that what we do every single day when we put that gun belt on or when we grab that aid bag or whatever it is that we do, right? We're going in there to meet with bravery, whatever may befall us. We don't know what the call is going to bring. Now, I was not patrol. I was not like a uniformed officer in a city police department. I was a uniformed officer for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. That's very different. But when I was a special agent, when I was on duty calls, when I was on duty for the Office of Inspector General, I would be on call for 7 straight days. My phone would be, when the office lines were shut down at 5 or 6 o'clock, everything would be forwarded to my cell phone. And my phone would ring throughout the night, all night, every night for 7 straight days, because every single Border Patrol station along the Rio Grande Valley sector, every single Customs and Border Protection port of entry, every single, airport, every single seaport, every single Coast Guard station, if something bad happened involving an employee, an officer involved shooting, a smuggling event gone wrong, a pursuit with a rollover, a injured alien during an apprehension, a dog biting somebody, I mean, you name it. Somebody lost a flashlight, my phone would ring. And so you constantly, when you were on call, had to be in a state of mind where you could meet with bravery, whatever might befall you, because you might be racing off 2 hours away to Falfurrias, Texas, because there was a shooting incident, an officer-involved shooting at the checkpoint or whatever the case may be, right? So you have to meet with bravery, whatever may befall you. And that is the life that you lead as a first responder, whether you're a fireman, whether you're an EMT, whether you are a law enforcement officer, you are responding to calls. You have to meet it with bravery. So I think it's a wonderful quote to explore, and I think we should explore it in the context of Seneca's life. So Stoicism acknowledges, as we know, that suffering is an inherent part of the human experience. Rather than shying away from or fearing these trials, the Stoics embrace them. It's that idea of amor fati, love your fate, right? Embrace as opportunities for personal growth and development of inner strength, even the challenging and tough times. Adversity is fuel. We talk about that a lot on this podcast. We talk about how Marcus Aurelius talks about the log on the fire, is kindling, right? And the fire can consume it and turn it to ash, or you can use that fire to bring warmth and light to those around you, right? Adversity is the kindling for the fire. It's what you do with the fire is what matters. Opportunities for personal growth can come out of some of the hardest situations. We can develop inner strength from some of the hardest situations. So since we're talking about Seneca, let's take Seneca as an example. Seneca, according to most historians, was born the same year or within the same few years as Jesus Christ. So to kind of put this in a historical context, 2,224 years ago, Seneca is born. Now, he's born in Rome in the early days of what was becoming the Roman Empire. This is, first century. This is a very, very young and new empire at this point. It's just kind of thrown off the shackles of the Republic, and it's starting to grow. Now, Nero, 54 years into this first century, 54 years after Christ, Nero ascends to the Roman throne as emperor. at the age of 16 after the death of his stepfather, Claudius. Now, Nero, not a good dude. Like, that's as historical and nerdy as I'm going to get. Seneca, because the emperor who comes to the throne is so young, Seneca is hired and brought in as a tutor to the young Nero. He's tapped to serve basically as an advisor and a counselor. In some ways, he's running the empire behind the scenes while Nero is learning and growing to the point where he is capable of wearing the purple, donning the purple, and making decisions on his own. Now, as happens with people given absolute power, especially those given at a young age, Nero starts out, looking at his advisor Seneca as a friend, as a good teacher, as the Spanish would say, a maestro, but as somebody who he can learn from. But over time, as his power grows, as his relationship with his own power grows, the relationship with Seneca, that limiting force, that Stoic force trying to teach him to be the philosopher king, be the person who lives well, who serves first, that starts to strain as Nero starts to realize, hey, it's pretty good to be king. I might lean into some of the basest things of that are available to me as the emperor of Rome. And so Seneca becomes, this relationship becomes strained as Nero's impulsive behavior and actions, and these things included like a series of controversies that we don't have time to get into, series of cruel decisions, as that stuff started to diverge from the Stoic principles that Seneca had instilled in him as a young boy. Now, Seneca decides, amidst all of this, I need to resign. He tries to resign on principle, but Nero refuses to allow it. And there's a whole long story here. Seneca ends up getting exiled earlier in his life. He gets brought back to work with Nero. He gets exiled again. I think he gets exiled twice. He comes back both times or gets brought back both times. He tries to resign. He tries to tell Nero, I can't work with you anymore if you're not going to listen to me, if you're not going to moderate some of your terrible behavior, if you're not going to fall in line with this virtuous life that I'm trying to teach you, then I shouldn't be your advisor. And Nero says no. And so he keeps him nearby. And Seneca, effectively, who is one of the wealthiest Stoics, he's a playwright. He's wealthy in his own right. He's doing quite well for himself. He doesn't need this job, but he's almost trapped. He's almost put into this sort of untenable situation where you can't leave. You tried to quit. The emperor won't let you leave, but the emperor also won't listen to your advice. It's a very caustic and challenging relationship. And Seneca does his best to be a moderating voice to Nero's increasingly erratic and cruel behavior. But over time, Nero grows tired of him, and in 65 AD, again, first century, he orders Seneca to commit suicide. He comes up with these trumped up charges that Seneca is trying to overthrow him, etc., and he orders him to commit suicide. Now, understanding that his integrity and his reputation are going to live on well behind him, understanding the safety of his family is at stake, because if he doesn't do what he's been ordered to do, if he doesn't commit suicide, his family, Nero could send a legion to kill him and his entire family. So he leans into the only path that's truly available to him at this point, and that is acceptance. That is acceptance of fate. That is meeting his fate. And so, well, we're unlikely to share Seneca's fate, being told by one of our bosses to go kill ourselves. Our own chain of command isn't going to do that. At least I hope not. But we must always be prepared to stand on principle and commit career suicide when those that we advise or work for behave in a manner that is unbecoming of the position. How many of you have been in a situation, as you're listening to this, where you're asked to do something you shouldn't, where you're put in a position to do something that is without honor, that is crossing a line, that's crossing a boundary, and you go along to get along? You must be willing to stand firm on principle and accept what happens to you, is what Seneca would say. You must be willing to stand firm and stand on principle. Now, that's what we saw from Cato. We talked a lot about Cato last week on the podcast. Cato, of course, stood up to the rise of Julius Caesar, and rather than live under his tyranny when he lost the fight to maintain the Roman Republic, he committed suicide. He said, I must stand on principle. This is where I draw the line. I will not live in this world. I will take my exit now. Seneca does the same thing. He sacrifices himself to protect his family and to protect the Republic to the extent that he can. So again, while we are unlikely to share Seneca's fate at the hands of our own chain of command, we have to always be prepared to stand on principle in this job. And if we must, to commit career suicide, or if we must, to walk away from our career when those that we advise or work for behave in a manner that is unbecoming of the position, when they stop listening to reason, just as Seneca did. We cannot prevent adversity from entering our lives. Our jobs are adversity. Our lives are full of it. But we do maintain the power, as Seneca did, to shape our perspective, to shape our response to it, and meet it bravely. When bad things happen, when adversity happens, whether it's, again, I'm using the example of Seneca's relationship with his boss to kind of illustrate how that might happen in your work setting. But whatever the situation is, we cannot prevent adversity from entering our lives, but we do maintain the power to shape our perspective and to shape our response to it and to meet it bravely. And that is what Seneca is telling us to do, and that is what he did himself. Again, let me read this quote one last time before I send you off for the week with a journal prompt. The quote is, "Let us meet with bravery whatever may befall us. Let us never feel a shudder at the thought of being wounded or of being made prisoner or of poverty or persecution." Quick personal story. This, to me, is a very important quote in my life and in my career. I've told this story here on the podcast before. I'll tell it again in brief right now. In 2011, when I was a young special agent, I witnessed my own boss telling others in the office to falsify documents in case files. The long story is, he was facing an inspection by the internal inspections group in our agency. They were going to come down. They were going to look at our office. It was our turn on the chopping block that year. And he realized that there were too many case files open, that there wasn't enough progress being made. And all of that was his fault as a leader for opening them up. So he gathered up a group of agents, and some he forced, by virtue of the fact that he, could terminate them. They were probationary employees. Others he encouraged, he dangled the carrot of a future promotion. But he basically created a criminal conspiracy where a handful of agents created fake memos in active criminal investigations to make the cases look like they were moving along faster than they were. So when the inspectors came down, they would see an office that had their crap together instead of an office that didn't. I became aware of this. It was a very tough decision for me to stand on principle and to blow the whistle on that, because I realized and I understood what that would mean for my career. I realized and I understood that I might get retaliated against. I might get transferred. I might lose my job. They might find an excuse to terminate me. Any number of things could happen. What ultimately did happen is, for the rest of my career, I never promoted. I was essentially blacklisted from promotions for the rest of my career. I was turned down for a number of transfers. I was turned down for specialized units that I put in for. None of those things are the kind of things that are documented retaliation. You just sort of get your name put at the bottom of the stack. But it was worth it to stand up and do the right thing, to face that with bravery, to sacrifice future promotions for the sake of doing the right thing, to protect the reputation of the agency, to protect the reputation of the people, the men and women who were doing the job and doing it well. I didn't want to be in that position. Fate placed me in that position where I happened to come across information about this criminal conspiracy. It was then up to me what I did with that information. I hope that if you find yourselves in situations like that in your career, in your personal life, when you have to make a tough decision, that you will have the same manner of bravery to face it down and do the right thing as Seneca did. I don't put myself on the level of Seneca by any means, but I know a little bit about that, and I hope that you find it within yourself to face those things down with bravery if you find yourself in those situations. So get out your pen, get out your notebook. I want you to write this down. What am I willing to sacrifice with bravery? Again, amor fati. Love your fate. That is what the Stoics teach us. They teach us that we should accept and love our fate, and that we still maintain agency over our decisions, even when faced with terrible choices. Folks, thanks for listening this week. There's a couple of ways that you can support this podcast if you're getting value from it. Number one, you can pick up a copy of my book. It's called In Valor, 365 Stoic Meditations for First Responders. In that book, you are going to get a Stoic quote every day. You are going to get some contextualization. You are going to get a journal prompt. It's going to be similar to the format of this podcast. You can pick up a copy of that at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, on my website, ChristopherHealy.com. You can DM me or message me on social media if you would like a signed copy, and I can get that to you as well. You can get that in print copy or in e-reader, whichever you prefer. It's a great resource for law enforcement, first responders to practice this philosophy daily. It's going to give you, again, quotes, contextualization. It's going to be directly relatable to your job. And it's going to give you those daily journal prompts that you can do in just a couple of minutes to check in on yourself. Give yourselves those markers to do something that is going to force you to ask yourself tough questions. Am I doing enough? What can I do better? Where can I improve? Number two, you can subscribe to the Stoic Responder on Substack for free. Now, you can, if you want to, enter one of those paid tiers. You're going to get the same thing for free, but if you want to support the podcast, you're more than welcome to make a donation on there as well. On that page, you're going to get these podcasts delivered directly to your email. You're also going to get my weekly newsletters with Stoic leadership and personal development tips. Again, it's completely free. You can pay if you want to, but the service is free. And finally, like, share, and subscribe to this podcast so that others can learn about what we're doing here, so that others can find value and the wisdom of the Stoics as well. Let me leave you with this before we head out for the weekend. Two companies that I think you should support, two organizations that are doing great things for the law enforcement community. Number one is Blue Badge Coffee Company. They've got great merch, great coffee, premium coffee for a premium cause, and that cause is supporting peer support programs with law enforcement departments and agencies around the country. If you would like to get some good coffee, get some good merch, and give back to the law enforcement community, I would highly recommend you check them out. Number two, if you've got some spare change in your pocket, you can support a 501c3 that is providing free therapy services and confidential therapy services to first responders around the country. That organization is the Overwatch Collective. Again, a 501c3 organization that is taking care of the people who take care of us. Folks, get out there, live your lives with valor, have a great weekend, and until Tuesday, you are out of roll. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe, like, rate, and share this podcast so that we can spread the benefits of Stoicism to other first responders. It will only take you a few moments, but it can help us tremendously. Until next time, out of roll.